This video was brought to you by Ground News. With just days left until the second runoff of the Romanian presidential election, the right-wing nationalist candidate Georgescu has reached out to the Hungarian community in Romania and Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban as he battles for every vote he can win. Even though Simion has had a somewhat strained history with both Romania's Hungarian diaspora and Orban himself, Orban initially reacted positively and even apparently endorsed Simion. But he quickly retracted his support after facing furious backlash from Hungarians, putting a dent on the already questionable relationship between these two populist figures. So in this video, we're going to take a look at the tense relationships between Hungarian minorities and Romanian nationalists, why Simion has tried to cozy up to Orban, and what could happen next. Never miss a major news story by listening to the Daily Briefing, TLDR's daily rundown of everything you need to know. Listen along in your favourite podcast app or by clicking the link in the description. So let's get straight into it. According to the 2021 census, Hungarians are the largest ethnic minority in Romania. In fact, there are around 1 million of them, making up approximately 5% of the population. Now, most live in areas that used to be part of Hungary before the Treaty of Trianon, mainly in Transylvania, a region claimed by both Romanians and Hungarians for centuries. For context, after the Austro-Hungarian Empire's defeat in World War I, the Treaty of Trianon was signed in 1920, significantly redrawing Hungary's borders, reducing its territory by about 189,000 square kilometers, or 72%, leaving around 3.3 million Hungarians outside of the country's new borders. Following the collapse of communism, the Hungarian diaspora in Transylvania became a key foreign policy issue in Hungary, and in 1989, the Democratic Alliance of Hungarians in Romania, or UDMR, was formed to represent Romania's Hungarian minority. The party, which would later maintain close ties with Viktor Orban's Fidesz party, campaigned for greater autonomy for Romania's Hungarian minority and entered Romania's parliament in 1990. Meanwhile, nationalist sentiments and hostility towards Hungarians grew in Romania. Nationalist groups accused the UDMR and other organised Hungarian voting blocs of promoting segregation and threatening national unity. Extremist factions established advocacy groups to oppose Hungarian political influence, leading to a rise in inter-ethnic tensions. This period also saw a number of violent incidents, including the March 1990 riots in Târgu Mureș, which resulted in 5 deaths and over 300 injuries. In 1992, nationalist parties then entered parliament, and 8 years later, the far-right Greater Romania Party came second in the 2000 elections, all while the UDMR maintained a vote share of between 6 and 7%. However, the push by Romania's mainstream parties to join the EU brought reforms and increased protections for minority rights, which began to diminish the nationalist influence in Romania's domestic politics. The country then joined the EU in 2007, and soon these nationalist parties either lost key leaders or merged with more centrist conservative parties, fading in political relevance. For more than a decade then, the far right were absent from parliament, until Simion, somewhat of a political outsider, previously known for campaigning on Romanian-Moldovan unification, established the Nationalist Alliance for the Union of Romanians Party, or AUR, in 2019. Simion, who criticised the impact that local autonomy in Hungarian majority areas had had on Romanians, gained national attention after he and a group of Romanian protesters clashed violently with Hungarians at a cemetery in Transylvania over the memorialization of World War I veterans. Simion then sparked a lot of controversy after he claimed that he had been assaulted by Hungarians, an allegation that was later proven to be false. This first violent inter-ethnic incident in decades was widely reported on and attracted international attention. It also sparked a diplomatic dispute between Hungary and Romania, led the UDMR to withdraw its support for the ruling government, and is credited for helping AUR make a breakthrough in the following year's general election, where they secured 9% of the vote. And today, Simion is looking on track to win this weekend's rerun of the presidential election, following the annulment of the first run in December 2024, with him winning the first round with 41% of the vote. Surprisingly though, over the course of this campaign, Simion has become a vocal supporter of the Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban. Now, this might sound surprising, given Simion's controversial history regarding Hungarian minority rights and Orban's promotion of revisionist ideas. In fact, the AUR even threatened to leave the European Parliament's centre-right ECR group if Orban's Fidesz party joined, which it never did because of the AUR. But now Simion seems to have found some kind of common ground with the populist leader, and in a recent interview, Simion told Euronews that he draws inspiration from Orban's fight to preserve national identity, Christianity, in the face of EU pressures, and said that he hoped to follow many of Orban's steps, particularly in family policy and resisting EU influence. This pivot fits into Simion's broader effort to appeal to the wider electorate. For instance, he's recently insisted that he's not anti-European nor pro-Russian, despite years of political branding to the contrary. But by buddying up to Orban then, Simion is probably trying to secure some support from the Hungarian diaspora, who often come out in big numbers on election day. While this might sound naively optimistic, there is some polling to show that the previous frontrunner, Georgescu, whose supporters have flocked to Simion since he was banned from running, might actually have been able to win over some ethnic Hungarians with his pro-peace, anti-Ukraine platform and his anti-LGBT rhetoric, which Orban has also built his supporter base around. However, the UDMR, which Simion also praised, calling the only serious political party in the governing coalition, wasn't convinced by Georgescu or Simion, and has come out vocally supporting Simion's liberal opponent. On the other hand, however, Orban has offered a slightly different response to the UDMRs. He said that he fully agreed with Simion on his sovereigntist policies, which many interpreted as a subtle endorsement ahead of the runoff. And he even wrote on X that Romanians can count on Hungarians in their fight for Christianity and sovereignty. This, however, did not go down well with the Hungarian minority, with his comments sparking an immediate backlash from several religious leaders representing Hungarian communities in Transylvania, and from the UDMR, with the party's president issuing a rare criticism of Orban and rejecting the idea that Simion could ever represent Hungarian interests. This is perhaps the first time that Orban's most steadfast international allies have openly expressed disappointment, an alarming development for the Hungarian leader, who's currently confronting his most serious challenge at home too, after nearly 15 years in power. Following a surge in support for his main opposition, whose leader responded to Orban's comments by accusing him of spitting in the face and betraying Hungarians abroad. Facing this increased pressure, Orban soon retracted his endorsement, saying that the UDMR's position should be the deciding factor in matters regarding the interests of Hungarians in Transylvania. Nonetheless, even though Simion failed to gain Orban's support, he's still the favourite to win this weekend's runoff. If he does become Romania's next president, it'll be interesting to see both how he manages his relationship with Orban and whether or not the EU can play the two would-be troublemakers off each other in order to minimise their obstructionism. However, this is a complex and nuanced story, and as such, there's plenty more to read about it online, with 78 sources reporting on Simion being the favourite to win Sunday's runoff. The issue is, how can you be sure that what you're reading here isn't just hugely biased? Well, that's a problem we face when making these videos too, and luckily, that's where this week's sponsor, Ground News, comes in. For this story in particular, they've identified that at least 4 left-leaning and 15 right-leaning outlets are reporting on it. In fact, in addition to this, they've also shown the main differences in the headlines among left and right-leaning outlets, with left-leaning outlets framing Simion primarily through a critical lens, repeatedly labelling him far-right to underscore ideological extremism and raise alarm about the nationalist shift threatening Romania's pro-European trajectory. Meanwhile, right-leaning coverage emphasises Simion's role as a clear favourite, using patriotic and defiant language, such as slam censors and Romania first, to portray him as a champion against establishment control and corruption. We're able to do that because of our sponsor Ground News, whose incredible website and app lets you discover the news and pulls back the curtain on media bias. That's because every story comes with a quick visual breakdown of the political bias, factuality, and ownership of the source's reporting, all backed by ratings from 3 independent news monitoring organisations. But one of the best parts of the app is their blind spot feed. It presents you with stories and articles that haven't been reported on by one side of the aisle or the other, helping you better break out of your media bubble and discover what those on the other side of the political spectrum are really saying. This is all in addition to the bias distribution we mentioned earlier, and together, these fantastic features help you to figure out exactly who's behind the stories you're reading, and what agenda they might have. Ground News is such a useful tool for our current media landscape, and I think that an app like this will only become more essential as the media landscape continues to evolve. So if you're interested in everything that Ground News has to offer, you can get 40% off the Unlimited Access Vantage plan by using the link in the description, or by scanning the QR code on screen. And this offer is only available here, so make sure you go to ground.news/TLDR or click the link in the description to get started and support an independent news platform working to make the media landscape more transparent.